Talk to us about whether this was anticipated.
I think this was anticipated. You see these kinds of things all the time whenever you have a data breach or any other time when you can make an argument that a company really should have talked to the market, talked to their investors about something that they did, and then they didn't. And in this case, that's exactly what happened. Back in March, Google found that they had a potential, what they called a software bug, that could have exposed the data of hundreds of thousands of their users to who knows who. And they decided, though, that they had no proof that that happened, therefore it wasn't, in their opinion, a material event, and decided not to talk about it until their hand was forced by some reporting earlier this week.
Yeah, so that's the important element here, isn't it? That it was a glitch, but it wasn't actually a data breach. Who, in fact, is out there? Who are the investors who are taking this move? And how worried would not only the company be, but the likes of Ruth Porat and Sundar Pichai and indeed Larry Page, who are mentioned in it?
There's law firms who sort of specialize in this kind of class action investor lawsuit. So whenever something like this happens, you have multiple law firms immediately trying to drum up some publicity, trying to reach out to anyone who might want to sign up, and then to get a certification of their class action lawsuit. I mean, that's not to say that this couldn't go forward. I think there's a very strong argument that Google really messed up here, that they were worried about the political ramifications. They saw what Facebook was dealing with, and they didn't want to have to deal with it themselves, and they didn't want to have to face the music for this glitch, potential breach, whatever you want to call it. And they held that information back, especially at a time when they were preaching transparency and saying that they were talking about things. And so I think there's a strong argument here. This is something obviously that would take a long time to play out through the courts. And at the end of the day, I mean, Google is a nearly $1 trillion company. I'm sure any, class action lawsuit would be a blip in their financials, not a big problem, nothing compared to the mega fines that the EU has been levying towards them, and that they've also been able to just sort of brush off of their back with their cash on hand. So at the end of the day, though, I think the important thing to take away here is that, Google decided not to talk about this. They're now being called out for it, and it's just another example of a big tech company, not exactly getting it right in terms of what users, politicians, regulators want from them when it comes to transparency.
Interestingly, Google didn't, well, Alphabet, the parent company, didn't see much of a slide in the shares. They're off by about 6 percentage points after we got the news of this potential glitch. Why do you think there wasn't so much impact? Do you think the regulatory burden won't be so significant when against Google in this particular turn?
I mean, we're comparing that to what happened to Facebook, obviously, when the Cambridge Analytica scandal came out, which was a very significant hit to their stock that they actually, in the subsequent months were able to build up. They're down now again, but that's more for business reasons. I think a lot of the political fallout has already sort of been priced in and played out in this scenario. And although there's a lot of noise, people do not expect major, deep changes to the regulation. Even when you look at Europe and what happened with the privacy regulation there's a strong view that it actually helped entrench Google because they actually have the power to deal with those regulations while their smaller competitors are finding them a lot tougher. And so I think that the investor view is to sort of take a cautious view on a lot of this political noise. That said, just as a reporter, as someone who watches these companies very closely over the years, I think that this has gone on longer than I would have expected. I, kept saying, oh, this will, sort of blow over. People don't really care about privacy in such a serious way. But I do think that as you see the noise continue to ratchet up, it shows that people do want to talk about this. And as the midterm elections approach in the United States, both parties are, although they have lots to talk about, they are talking about Google. They are talking about tech. It is one of their sort of points that they're hitting home, that they're talking to their voters about. This is not going away for these companies.